So, Paul Roma finally won the Nobel Prize for his work on endogenous growth, together with William Nordhaus. That's exciting for several of us working on development macroeconomics. And in this short clip, I want to explain to you three things. First, I want to say what I think about the decision of the committee and why I think it has some positive aspects. And then I want to explain to you in very simple words what's the essence of the of Roma's endogenous growth models as I read it. And in the third part, for those of you that might be more interested in economics, I'll give a little bit of a wider perspective on where I think the Roma model fits in and which policy conclusions we can take from there. So the Swedish Riksbank Prize in Economics in 2018 has been awarded to William Nordhaus, who has integrated climate change into long-run macroeconomics, and to Paul Roma, who's integrated technological innovation in long-run macroeconomics. Neither of the two candidates have been a large surprise. As far as I can think back, the last 5 years, both names have been mentioned as strong candidates. What's a little bit more surprising is that they've been awarded the prize together. So the question is, what do both of the theories that they developed share? And I think there's two clear messages here. The first message is that in both the climate change model of Nordhaus and Roma's growth model, a key conclusion is that a market economy that's left to its own will not produce an optimal result. So that was quite, not the mainstream during the time when these models developed. The key lesson we can take away from both of these models is that a policymaker, if he acts wisely or she, or a government intervention, if done well, can improve welfare to the society over a pure market outcome. Okay, so that's the first lesson. Markets on their own will not produce optimal results. And I think the second nice feature about the joint nomination of the two is the fact that often people say, do we need growth or do we need more environmental aspects? And they're seeing kind of opposite things, right? Whereas I think awarding the prize jointly is also a sign that protecting climate and protecting the environment does not need to go on the costs of growth, right? And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because in climate technology, there's a lot of innovation involved and we have to think through how we push these innovations, and that's also a key feature of the Roma model, right? So I think that's actually quite nice to bring the two together. A third reason for me personally is why I like Roma being awarded the prize is, there has been talk over the last years that development macro is dead. I think in the last 2-3 years or so, we have seen that all these going micro, all these going randomized controlled trials in development economics provides important insights. That's no question at all, but it's just one part of the story, right? So I think that's a good sign for us working on development macroeconomics. You may say now, well, yeah, the Nobel committee or the Riksbank committee always lags behind in their decisions, but they wouldn't award a prize to a theory that they see as a dead-end road, right? Of course, we can be skeptical also for good reasons about the decision. Again, it's two white men from US elite universities that have been awarded the prize. The last women I can think back that won the prize was in 2009, so that's 9 years ago, which, yeah, you can hold against the committee, but you can also see it's unfortunately a sign of still a male dominance in economics. I'll also say something about the problematic aspects of what Roma has done in his work or career, but that you will see in the last part of the clip. So what is Roma's endogenous growth model about? I think it has several interesting insights, but I'll focus on the key one. And this is a trade-off that we're seeing, and trade-offs are always the interesting questions in economics, right? So here the trade-off is a trade-off with respect to market power of firms, so monopoly power of firms. On the one hand side, we don't like market power, right? I mean, market power, boo, bad thing. Why? Because firms will tend to keep prices high. That means they will tend to sell less product, so we're underutilizing our resources. Okay. On the other hand, there's a positive feature of market power, because in the Roma model, if firms have market power, they have more incentive to innovate. What does that mean? A firm that makes profits and can increase these profits through technological innovation will have an incentive to innovate. So market power, for that reason, good thing. On the other hand, bad thing, right? And the question is, where are we? Do we need more market power because it's a good thing, or do we need less market power because monopolies have grown too big? That's the key essence in my reading of the Roma model. In any case, what the model is showing, that no matter how high market power is, for most relevant assumptions that we can make, the market itself will not produce an efficient outcome or efficient equilibrium. What does that mean? If we leave markets to themselves, as many policymakers want to do, then yeah, we'll get an outcome, but it's not the best outcome, right? So a policymaker can intervene and can improve the welfare of the whole society, so the aggregate welfare, without harming anyone, right? So that's what we call Pareto improvement. So in economics, so that's a quite technical term. So we would say in the Roma world, market equilibrium is not Pareto efficient. So what's the wider significance of the Roma model? Or to ask this question differently, what are the key policy prescriptions we can take away from there? And that's where the problem starts a bit, okay? So the Roma model is different from its predecessor that was around decades before the Roma model, the Solow model. And the Solow model has led to very testable empirical predictions. Okay, the problem was it was easy to test these predictions, but it turned out they were mostly wrong, even though I think the variant of the Menke-Roma-Weil Solow model still fits the data quite well. However, the Roma model is not of that style because everything in that model depends on something else. Okay, so the answer would always be, it depends, as often in economics, right? And I think it's interesting also because it shows us how much we need also micro evidence to nurture these macro models. Because what matters in the Roma model, for example, could be the production function in the research and development sector, or could be incentives for improving your own education, right? And both these things we have to get from micro evidence. For maybe even improving teaching in schools, we need randomized control trials. So I think it's a very good example that there's not like micro and macro in development economics, and they both hate each other, right? It's more about, do we want to make policy based on evidence or not? And that's, I guess, the key front line in development macroeconomics, all right? So yeah, policy, I mean, there's some things that the model suggests, but it's not very, very crystal clear. And I think one aspect here is the charter cities concept that Stromer proposed. So the idea is that developing countries give up some of their land, and this is being chartered by industrialized countries or their multinational firms. And Roma kind of does not see a reason for any, institutions or democratic legitimacy there. So it's a very problematic concept, and I think several economists should have rejected that proposal way stronger. In any case, from the perspective of the Roma model, why does this concept of chartered cities make sense? Well, because the idea is that the presence of foreign high-tech or higher-tech multinationals in developing countries give an incentive to for the local population to invest in human capital, to go to school longer, to invest into I don't know, university education, for example. Right, so from that perspective, the idea of charter cities is consistent with the Roma model, which is all about innovation and technology in the context of monopolistic competition. But it's not that the Roma model per se necessarily leads to you have to establish charter cities in developing countries and don't give them any democratic legitimacy, right? My reading of the Roma model is a completely different one of the policy implications, which is, you know, to really smash monopolies where they have become too big, right? Even though Roma would also agree on that, right? Roma would agree basically on everything that's consistent with his model, and that's quite a lot, right? So he's probably taking his own model a bit too seriously. In any case, I think that's an important question today, right? I mean, why do we allow Facebook to buy WhatsApp and Instagram, for example, right? What effect will that have on innovation, right? I mean, Facebook is not even able to protect the privacy of its users, as we have seen. I don't see why this increase in market power would lead to more technological innovation, right? So I think one key policy prescription, especially in the data sector or IT sector, is to look very harshly on how important firms have come and whether we cannot improve welfare by just, you know, smashing up some of these monopolies that have grown there. The other key policy prescription, and Roma would probably also second that, is that it's very important how we design incentives in the research and development sector, which is a very delicate issue, right? You know how important it is to do educational reforms in several OECD countries, high-income countries. But they're important, and I guess that's also something right now in China, right? China will have to think a lot about their research and development landscape and how to align incentives there in order to see a lot of innovation, right? So as I said, there's a bottom line for the Roma model. Not crystal clear which policy implications to take from there, even though there are several candidates, right? So having a look at market power is important. Having a proper design of the education sector is important, and giving incentives for people to invest in education is important. But there are several ways to that. That could be with like more incentive, giving more incentives to teachers. Roma came up with this idea of his charter cities. Any case, not crystal clear policy implications, but some strong candidates for policy scope. And the other key takeaway from the Roma model is that there is always scope for policy intervention, no matter how it looks like, because the market outcome itself will not lead to the optimal result. So if you liked this video or didn't like it, or have any questions related to the Roma model, I'd be happy to learn about it in the comments below. And then you can also subscribe to my channel to learn about my views on current economic issues and on conceptual issues related to development macroeconomics.